Everyone. Thank you for being here at this time when most of the people, they just leave. So that shows your commitment to ecosystem-based adaptation. Uh, Before we go into, today we will be having an interactive session where we will be having experts from government, parties, INGOs, donor, island, and we have minister also from Zambia. So we will be discussing how to make it effective. So if we look at overall, you know, ecosystem-based adaptation, climate change, and all this, the discourse started in 1980s when media started projecting climate change. Then IPCC was set up in 1988. That gave a scientific rigor to it. And then slowly things got started. Environmentalists got engaged in promoting overall climate change, that it's critical because they were at the forefront and they can see in changes in ecosystems. So they were behind this whole thing in coming. But it took them almost 10, 15 years to come up with really something defined, okay, how ecosystems and biodiversity can play a critical role in enhancing adaptation. So then in 2008, IUCN together with members and partners coined this term ecosystem-based adaptation. And then within a year, 2009, it was adopted by CBD and official definition came up that how ecosystem-based adaptation can help as a part of overall strategy. But this was very unique because throughout all work of conservation, conservationists were making an argument for ecosystem and humans were as if they were getting co-benefits of conservation. So here, if you look at the definition of ecosystem-based adaptation, it is the use of ecosystems and biodiversity for human well-being to enhance human adaptive capacities. So this was a whole paradigm shift. So conservationists were getting into a territory, if not sort of unfamiliar, but less traveled, where human well-being was not just co-benefit of conservation or preservation, it was more focused on use of ecosystem services and biodiversity for human well-being. So there all started, and then, 2009, there came the flagship project, thanks to the German funding on ecosystem-based adaptation in mountain. That also set a trend. Before that, a lot of work was being done. And in many cases, I just got to know in Zambia was the first who had ecosystem-based adaptation project. But after this official definition, it started going up. And this term is one of quite unique if you look at the history, that being coined in 2008, defined in 2009, and now there are over 150 projects. BMUB almost have funded $100 million specifically on EBA. Jeff has funded around 200 million on this. So other donors are also coming up, EU and other, whether they use the term, but the principles are there, ecosystem-based adaptation. But still, it is something which needs to be defined properly, because based on that, I just shared the history that conservationists coined it, but it was human-centered. That was a major difference than the rest of the methodologies or approaches we have. And then in the overall scenario of nature-based solutions, that always remained very broad, where we had that, okay, nature-based solution, whatever we are doing, using natural resources and all this, we used to call nature-based solutions. Now, slowly, there is a movement to make it concrete. We are trying to have standards, working with members and partners, and same is the case with ecosystem-based adaptation, which comes under the umbrella of nature-based solutions, and we are moving forward with members and partners. But it's a big, big challenge, because when we look at it, do we have real evidence, science-based, that return on investment in ecosystem-based adaptation, that policymakers should invest more in this and not the traditional dikes and other? though anecdotal examples are so many, all over we have hundreds of case studies, but we still need to make a scientific case for it. There are issues. Many a time people say it's business as usual. You people have put old wine in new bottle and doing still the same thing. Is it the case? Is it all this investment which is coming and mostly going into mitigation? There is some for adaptation. And then again, you have another terminology dividing everything and ecosystem-based adaptation. Is this the case? Or the other argument that EBA, ecosystem-based adaptation, is one of those approaches which links everything because it is based on nature-based solutions. So it also contributes directly towards mitigation. It also contributes towards the objectives of Aichi targets. It also contributes towards CCD. That's why you would see that ecosystem-based adaptation is part of all these new conventions, including UNSDR, Sendai Declaration, that it contributes towards that. And 2014 CBD has decision 12, where EBA has been put as one of the critical elements, and all parties have been requested to have EBA part of CBD and other processes. But still, we have a long way to go because things won't happen if we keep doing business as usual. So to do that, we have requested all the experts over here that if they can share their experiences, challenges, and all this, so it would be a very interactive session. So you are encouraged to participate and please do that. I know it's a difficult time of the day, but what we would do, we will have 5 minutes interventions from panelists. Then I will come to you that for your input, and then we will have an interactive discourse overall. So first of all, I would request Norbert Korzen from BMUB ICKI to share overall, because potential of ecosystem-based adaptation, and they were the first who gave overall flagship funding, that why they got interested, what were the reasons that they are leading the way. So over to you, Norbert.
Thank you, Ali, for inviting me, for inviting us. Thank you for organizing that event and for the wonderful introduction, which really explained already what ecosystem-based adaptation is and gave also to some extent the answers to the critical question. But I start with this question. I skipped the first slide in order to be quicker, to stay to the 5 minutes. What you can see here is the breakout of the ICKI portfolio. We started in 2008, more than 500 projects. We committed up to more than 1.7 billion euros since that time. But what you can see here is how that is split among, oh, it's gone now. Well, is there a pointer here? And okay, no, anyway, you will see it. So on the right-hand side, the biggest chunk is for mitigation. That's very, very obvious. The ICKI was created to support developing countries' actions on in the area of climate, to support what they heard from the negotiations, to implement the negotiations, the decisions of the COP, and now, of course, we will support the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And mitigation, of course, plays a crucial part. That's why more than 50% of the projects are in the field of mitigation. Then we have a chunk of 357 million, which is adaptation-related projects, and out of that, 100 million ecosystem-based adaptation. I come to that. Then what we always put separate is REDD+, REDD forest protection areas. We don't think it's appropriate to simply include it in the mitigation chunk, so we have more than 300 million, which we have in REDD+. And then, that's important to mention, 150 million for biodiversity protection. It's because the ICKI, although the name says climate initiative, has also the purpose to serve as support for the CBD, for the Convention on Biodiversity. And we have always tried the projects in this area to combine to an extent possible with climate, but of course there's limitations. And then we thought, what could we do in order to do more on biodiversity and on climate, and that the solution or the answer was combine the two, and that is ecosystem-based adaptation. And I think that the concept has proven to be useful. as you can see. And Ali just in a much better way than I can describe what ecosystem-based adaptation is. So it fits to a number of elements, not only adaptation, it is also biodiversity conservation. To some extent, it's carbon sequestration and disaster risk reduction, sustainable water management, very important livelihood, because in the end, it's adaptation that is the focus. So humans are in the center, and sustainable development. Thus, ecosystem-based adaptation addresses a number of SDGs, not just climate. And that's why we thought we test this concept, and we tested it with a big project. IUCN was included, UNDP was included, and UNEP was included. It was an EBA flagship on mountains. But we didn't stop there. We continued in that, and what we achieved is at least 20 countries in their INDCs to ecosystem-based adaptation in their NVCs, and more than 100 countries mentioned something about ecosystem-based actions, visions in the adaptation. So it's also what Ali said. They did not fully copy the name, but at least it's more or less the same. So you can see the concept has gotten some attraction. What we will do and what we did is to systematically generate knowledge and exchange across regions, across ecosystems, across the various sectors. And what we started working with was mountains. We worked in forests. Meanwhile, mangroves is a very popular area, and we try to identify questions and gaps and synthesize the knowledge. And we would like to continue doing that. What we are doing now is to mainstream the concept, to promote the mainstream of that concept in national planning processes, in the NAPs, and also to combine it with innovative financing schemes. And we will have, I will present very quickly an example of one recent project we are funding in Peru and Colombia, microfinance for ecosystem-based adaptation. It's implemented by UNEP and the Frankfurt School of Finance, and it addresses, in particular, the agricultural sector in mountainous region in the Andes, and it provides micro credits to farmers, to smallholders, to change their land use activities, their agricultural activities, according to the impacts and threats from climate change. So by that they could what could they do? They could diversify the crops they are raising. They could do something on soil conditionings. They could install fire breaks, drainage systems, etc. A lot of them is very, very small, tiny interventions, but the farmers are lacking the finance for that. And by using now this microfinance system in this area, which is normally not has been used in the microfinance finance area, we provided them the opportunity to diversify and raise more revenues, which is in the end what the farmers want, and improve the productivity, and thus also adapt to climate change. So what are the lessons learned, and what are the challenges? Ali has said it. The knowledge about EBA is just raising, but it is still very heterogeneous, and that led to skepticism of policymakers. They did not buy very quickly or ad hoc the message that ecosystem-based may address the problems they have in their country. So therefore, this knowledge generation is very important, because in the end, ecosystem-based adaptation measures have demonstrated that they are low cost, and that very cost efficient, and that they have a no regret character. But they need to be communicated better in order to be applied. A challenge is that EBA measures sometimes are site specific, and you cannot just apply the same measure which you tested in the Andean Alps also somewhere in Africa. But it's not always the case, and this has to be addressed by broadening the concept and scaling it up. And then I think the number of cases you can refer to is increasing. I stop here. I have more points to say in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Norbert. Let's now have from TNC, the Nature Conservancy, Kathy McLeod, Managing Director, Climate Risk and Investment, would share TNC's experiences in EBA. Kathy.
Thank you, Ali. Hello, everybody. Thank you for your fortitude for coming at 6:30 at night. It's very nice to see everyone. I wanted to start us off with a very short video that exhibits our approach to measuring the risk reduction value of nature. And so take a look. It has lots of applications. We're going to talk about that a little bit. It's 1.5 minutes, so I'll have 3.5 left at the end. But I think it's worth taking it up and just take a quick look. Coastal flooding from storms is an increasingly serious problem for communities around the world. In 2012, Hurricane Sandy struck the eastern United States and was the second costliest storm in U.S. history. Wetlands and marshes along our coastlines have been lost at high rates due to coastal development. In a new study, we worked with the insurance industry to put a dollar value on the flood protection benefits of coastal wetlands provided to communities during Hurricane Sandy. Using an engineering model, we calculated the storm surge and flooding impacts from Sandy. We compared the impacts of the storm to the coastline with wetlands and without wetlands. The results show us the protective value of the wetlands and their ability to reduce damages to property. In coastal areas across 12 states impacted by Sandy, wetlands reduced damages by more than $625 million. Because of the wetlands, the damage to Maryland's coastal communities was 30% less. And in New Jersey, wetlands saved more than $400 million in assets from damage. This study in partnership between conservation, academia, and the risk industry showcases the value of our wetlands as natural defenses, suggests potential financial incentives for government, business, and individual property owners, and supports new approaches for restoring our protected coastal ecosystems. When the next hurricane strikes, healthy coastal wetlands can play a key role in better protecting our coastal communities and economies. Thank you very much. So in essence, if you remembered nothing of my 5 minutes, I want you to remember 3 words, and that is that nature reduces risk. And so the words that we anecdotal evidence, but what we needed to do is make the case and quantify the case. And so what the Nature Conservancy is focused on in one piece of our work, and there's not time today to talk about the breadth of the work, but on this particular panel, I want to talk about the quantification and the economics of the way nature reduces risk. And this has application in developed economies and developing economies and all across that spectrum. And insurance plays a key role in that. So first, this crowd does not need for me to share why we do this. I hope not, but in essence, this is urgent. It's happening every day. And the idea that 62,000 people are displaced every single day by climate is alarming. And to know that nature can play a role in reducing that, we're gonna do everything we can to advance it as quickly as possible. Click it in a certain place? Yeah. Where did you point it? Oh. Ali, where do I, okay, there we go. So in essence, what our mission is to scale
natural infrastructure all over the world so that communities, economies, people everywhere are protected by nature from storms and floods. And I want to focus on the coastal ecosystems for this quick talk. Coral reefs, oyster reefs, marshes, and mangroves. We understand those systems better than any others. Some quick numbers for you to put in your back pocket to take with you in addition to those 3 special words. These systems are incredibly powerful, and when they're protected and in good health, they protect us at very high rates. And we have numbers to support that with these different systems in different geographies for different vulnerabilities. 3 things I want to mention where we're working. 1, we are working to create a new insurance product that insures the Mesoamerican reef based on its protective value of the tourism economy and all of the people associated with the tourism economy. There's lots to say about that, but in the effort to be brief, I'll press on to talk about our work in Miami-Dade County. We're looking at how mangroves protect a multi-billion-dollar wastewater treatment plant. As sea level rise is rising on the plant in the middle of the county of Miami-Dade, they're increasing their capacity in the South County facility. We are measuring what will the impact be if you expand the mangrove forest to further protect from storms, floods, and erosion for that important public infrastructure, and how can that be financed and how can that be scaled. 3rd, a hybrid approach to resilience in Grenville Bay, Grenada. It's a hybrid project of reef restoration with carefully designed reef gabion baskets that are providing instant erosion control and wave attenuation to the economic center of Grenville Bay, which is its fishing community. And so on the ground and in the water, and from a financial and policy perspective, we're focused on, yes, making that case and then making that case for scale. One aspect from the public-private approach for insurance. Would you all raise your hand if you have heard of the Insurance Development Forum? Excellent. Good people in the back. Okay, the Insurance Development Forum is a public-private combination that after our Oceans Conference in Chile, as you all know, many countries came together as the Vulnerable 20 and now the Vulnerable 42, and in essence said, we need help to address these vulnerabilities from climate. One of the ways that our community is helping, along with the insurance industry, which played maybe for the first time a role in the Paris climate talks last year, to bring risk assessment and new concepts of risk transfer, including some of these risk pools that you may have heard of. These are fantastic acronyms, the CRIF, the PCRAFI, and the ARC. Anybody ever heard of those? Excellent. So the Pacific Catastrophic Risk and Insurance Facility, same for the Caribbean one, the African Risk Capacity. They're bringing new risk transfer products at a reduced rate to countries that have pooled their risks. But while they're pooling the risks, they're not reducing it. And so one of our aspirations is to reduce risk with nature-based approaches. Reduce the risk, reduce the cost of covering that risk, and get all of the multiple benefits that come from ecosystem-based adaptation. And so the Insurance Development Forum, the Nature Conservancy, has partnered with the IDF to second expertise on how ecosystems reduce risk for these vulnerable countries in all of these different geographies. We work with lots of members of the industry. It's a diverse industry, but bringing quantified reduction of risk from storms and floods with nature is a critical tool for communities, and we'll be bringing that in every direction with the insurance industry. Thank you, and I look forward to talking about it.
Thank you, Kathy. US Congress, before this revolution, they had put $500 million for ecosystem restoration because of the example, which Kathy shared, that will be used to restore coastal ecosystems in case of future disasters. Now we have from Honduras, presidential delegate on climate change, Krista Castro, who would share experiences from Honduras and also from Central America. Krista?
Thank you. Well, we are talking about challenges and opportunities on adaptation-based ecosystems. So as you know, or maybe you don't know, but Central America is a region because really vulnerable because of its location in the tropics. So we got a lot of storms and we got a lot of droughts, severe and extreme. So this is something that affects us really often, almost all the years, and we're having trouble with our people. And in a specific location that we know as the dry corridor. So we have to attend our people as an emergency, giving them food always when we lost our crops. So with IUCN, we have developed a project that its location, it's in the watershed between the river, between the El Salvador and Honduras, in the river known as Guascoran. Then we have proved how empowering people is really important to really manage a watershed. So this took us to design what we know now as our master plan for water, forest, and soil. And its vision, the vision of this plan is to make of Honduras a country really highly productive that manages his and their resources as well, I will read it in Spanish because it's really difficult to me to translate it right now. So we see our country, Honduras es un país altamente productivo que gestiona y aprovecha de manera integral los recursos agua, bosque y suelo, con participación comunitaria, impulsando el desarrollo humano y económico sostenible, capaz de afrontar los riesgos del cambio climático en beneficio de toda la población hondureña. Desarrollamos este plan y me quedo en español porque la siguiente filmina, que es donde muestra ya lo que hemos formulado, cómo estos tres recursos, el bosque, el suelo y el agua, si empoderamos a nuestra gente con gobernanza local, con una verdadera participación comunitaria, en donde ellos son los que gestionan estos recursos, no solo van a sacar provecho del agua, de la producción de agua para con su consumo humano, sino también van a gestionar el bosque para beneficio de todos y asimismo procurar un buen uso y adecuado uso del suelo para la producción de alimentos, procurando así la seguridad alimentaria, no solamente en el corredor seco, como les comentaba al inicio, sino también promoviendo el desarrollo productivo a nivel nacional. ¿Se sabe, pa? Okay. Well, and now I'm almost done, as we see right now. Okay, our focus is our people. Right now, we are investing $25 million of our national funds with, and it's a big investment for 5 years, just to make what we are seeing right now in this picture, something that we already tested with this project with IUCN, and that we are sure that we are going to make a lot of things, good things to our people, and guaranteeing them water, food production, food security. And as you see, there are many things that are already going on. And we have a big challenge because of the pine beetle. We have now to restore our forests. And this is a big, big challenge because one of our commitments in the Paris Agreement is that our INDC is to restore 1 million hectares. And we lost almost the same amount the last 2 years. So right now we're working on nurseries, and we are doing a lot of reforestation, but also we are hoping to protect what is going on now and within the 5 years that we are going to have this program. But we hope that this will help us to get more funding and do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. It's very important that government should come forward and invest in adaptation, because adaptation is such a tricky thing. It's a move may prepare communities through a project funding for flood management. After 3-5 years, they would be drought. We cannot, have all the time looking forward towards donors that they would help us to all this. So it's critical that these principles and other get integrated and infused into local policy processes. So let's see how we doing on all this, and I will request now from RARE, Paolo Damodan, who's Senior Manager Strategy and Development, to share his experiences, how communities getting involved and doing the work on ecosystem-based adaptation.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm Paolo Damodan. I'm from the Philippines and from RARE. It's great to be presenting with friends who are part of this network promoting EBA. RARE is a nonprofit organization, and basically what we do is we identify and scale locally proven environmental solutions. In the last 30 years, what we've done is implemented projects in about 50 countries. And at the core of our work is really about promoting behavior change for adoption of approaches and practices, including, and in this case, EBA. Currently in the Philippines and in 4 other countries, we are focused on implementing fisheries and coastal resource management through a range of interventions, promoting locally managed access through community support. So basically, I'm here to discuss about the role of EBA and our experiences in these communities. The effectiveness of EBA will be determined to a large extent by the ability of these communities to understand, appreciate, anticipate threats, and adopt any new practices for the management of ecosystems that will reduce vulnerability. Climate impacts aggravate the existing threats and push marine resources to a tipping point, which jeopardizes the livelihood options, food security, critical habitats, and the natural resilience. In the Philippines, it means it will affect more than 800 coastal municipalities with about 1.4 million artisanal fishers and their families who depend on them. RARE is currently involved in about 70 coastal municipalities in the Philippines, working with local governments, chief executives, policymakers, communities, the poorest fishermen, community leaders, alliances, networks, and other important stakeholders. Our experience has helped us to understand that EBA is crucial and leads to co-benefits, where locally managed resources not only help food and livelihood security, but also to ecological and social resilience. For ecological resilience, we saw that A, crucial habitats like mangroves, coral reefs, serve as a natural buffer to storm surges. B, reducing human threats to the reefs increases the resilience to climate threats. And lastly, marine resources became the immediate and only source of food for disaster victims, especially those far-flung areas that were difficult to reach during relief operations. All 3 of these were seen in the post-Typhoon Haiyan experience, where we just celebrated 3 years ago, the 3rd year anniversary, that killed about 7,000 of our brothers and sisters. At the same time, establishment of locally managed areas, building capacity of management bodies, enforcement strategies, and other community-level interventions all help empower communities, help increase ownership that leads to social resilience. Also in this Haiyan experience, high appreciation and ownership led the communities to be able to quickly recover and bounce back in the management of their marine resources. And at the heart of this work, we believe that EBA for climate change needs behavior change. These are the mascots that you saw outside. That we can help reap maximum and sustainable benefits when communities are involved, engaged, and appreciative of these interventions. RARE has been running sophisticated social marketing campaigns or the use of marketing principles for natural resource management to maximize EBA efforts. In a recent survey we have conducted, after running a campaign, 90% of the fishers believe that better managing their coral reefs and marine resources will help buffer the effects of climate change. A simple statement, but this is such a very powerful implication. This knowledge and awareness turn into long-lasting community action and preparation. While simple, these mascots prove to be one of the most effective channels to get the message across to these communities. And there is a science behind these mascots. How do these all work? In all the sites, we follow what we call the theory of change. It's basically about increasing community support through building of knowledge, awareness, and interpersonal communication, all with social resilience indicators that leads to sustainable fisheries management, which is a combination of barrier removal strategies that leads to behavior change. This eventually leads to ecosystem conservation and fisheries productivity and reduction of threats that leads to environmental and social results. This behavior change and impact with a robust monitoring system with specific indicators ultimately lead to climate, ecological, and social resilience of these communities. And to Norbert's point, while we know that this community level work is important, scale is difficult. And so it is equally crucial to institutionalize these community level experiences and efforts. And so what we do is we help governments establish the link between community-led actions to national plans. We do it through incorporation of these learnings to help make informed decisions in local management plans, including those of fisheries, local development plans, disaster risk, and local adaptation plans. Recently, at the same time in the national level, WARE is conducting a joint study with the National Planning Agency of the Philippines to do a national return on investment through a cost-benefit assessment, really understanding and making a case better for the sector and through interventions like EBA and behavior change approaches. We are in the most important and exciting times, and for all of us, we harness the momentum to speak for the environment. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Behavioral change is so critical. At times we, keep talking about having evidence, scientific knowledge and all this, but we forget that, decisions are not made based on evidence. I have quit smoking 25 times. So, so it's really important that, we need to direct our efforts, not just evidence, but also behavioral change. Now I will request Seychelles Ambassador Ronald Jomo. You know him, a great champion of environment from an island country, leading on EBA through. So Ronnie.
Thank you, Ali, for the invitation and your co-host for inviting me to speak. And thank you, all of you here who have turned up tonight. It's quite a big crowd. I'm going to start with two pieces of information. We'll put into context what I'm going to talk about. This is Seychelles' NDC. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it to you. However, in its long-term vision, I just want to quote something from the long-term vision of the Seychelles NDC. And I quote, Seychelles' approach to climate change adaptation is guided by a collective understanding of the need to ensure that all actions taken must conserve the integrity of the Seychelles' natural environment and heritage for present and future generations. I don't know how many NDCs start off with a long-term vision talking about the value of nature, but that's ours. The other piece of information is, thank you. The other piece of information I want to give you is Seychelles' 115 islands put together, we come to 455 square kilometers. Our exclusive economic zone is 1.37 million square kilometers. Our ocean territory is 3,000 times the size of our land territory. Looking at it the other way, our islands make up 0.03% of our territory. We are a liquid country. So I think you see where I'm heading here. One of the things you'll find in the NDC is a lot of references to ocean activities, ocean services, that sort of thing. Because we have decided that EBA is going to be one of the key means we're going to use to implement our NDC, to implement the Paris Agreement, to implement the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development. And in the meantime, whilst we were putting our NDC together, we have started moving on EBA projects. Already in Seychelles, we have 3 projects funded by the Adaptation Fund, UNEP, and China, focusing on the management of coastal ecosystems, the protection of mangroves, and sustainable watershed management. But the pride of Seychelles' achievements is the debt swap that we finalized at the beginning of this year with the Paris Club in South Africa for $22 million to raise $22 million to protect 30% of our EEZ, that's 1.37 million square kilometers, as marine protected areas. So that's why we're calling our debt swap a debt for adaptation swap. Now, the debt swap, which incidentally came through good partnerships. Partnerships is a key thing here. This also will change the dynamics of it all. It all started in the Global Island Partnership, which Seychelles is part of, together with TNC and other people in the room here, IUCN. And the debt swap, as we said, we wanted to protect 30% of our EEZ, and we had 1.37 million square kilometers that we knew hardly anything about. It meant that we went into a marine spatial plan to try and find out for the first time in our history, what do we have in our waters? Where are they? What are their value? Are they used? Should we exploit them? But that is not going to be enough for what we're trying to do. I'll give you another thing from our NDC showing the potential. I talked about 455 square kilometers, which makes us a small developing state, island state. The 1.37 million square kilometers makes us into a large ocean state. And to talk about the potential of using EBA in large ocean states as a way of addressing climate change, both adaptation and mitigation. In our NDC, it says, Seychelles will be a net sink of greenhouse gases and in 2030, and it will become a net emitter only in 2033. And then it adds, these calculations do not take into account the potential for additional sinks in the form of marine ecosystems, that is blue carbon. Just think of the potential we have in oceans if we take this approach. But the problem with many islands is we don't have the funds and the research capability to do this. Before we can calculate all what we can do as in blue carbon, we need financial and institutional and capacity support to do what we want. In Seychelles, for example, the University of Seychelles has set up a Blue Economy Research Institute because we are basing our economic future on the blue economy. And one of the things we need to use the Blue Economy Research Institute as a hub for research, not necessarily just in our EEZ, but in the region we're in, which is the Southwest Indian Ocean, which has other islands. So it shows you that small islands, we don't have a big industrial base. If you come to Seychelles, we show you this is an industry, you laugh at us. That's our definition of industry. Our main drivers of the economy are marine-based tourism and fisheries. So it makes sense that the approach that many islands should do is the blue economy approach itself based on ecosystem-based adaptation, because obviously we're not going to use all the ocean we have. We know a lot about our coastal management. We know about mangroves. We know about what you're talking about, how mangroves protect from storm surges. When the 2004 tsunami came to Seychelles, it was those pieces of the coastline that had hotels on that were the worst affected. So we saw firsthand. So it shows the potential we have. If you bring all the small island developing states together, bring all the overseas island territories and countries of other countries together, and become a force, this is what Global Island Partnership is doing, then you have a potential of addressing climate change, sustainable development, while making sure that oceans are at the top of the agenda. We also, this is the COP where there's most mention of oceans in this COP. But there are people who are still fighting back and saying, yeah, it's not in the official process, blah, 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 blah. My answer to that is you put it in your NDC. You ask me in the process to do an NDC, and I tell you to implement my NDC, I have to address ocean and EBA issues. I don't have to go and fight over commas and full stops in a room. That's my NDC. And if we do it together, we're going to have a lot of action moving forward. Ali said it's exciting times. No, it was Paulo who said exciting times. That's how we can address the issue of oceans, at the same time the issue of resilience, whether it's natural resilience, in our case through innovative source of financing, financial resilience. It's a way that finally, using NDC that I'm proposing, Seychelles is proposing, that we finally bring oceans to the fore and with them ecosystem-based adaptation, in your case forests, to the fore of the discussion on implementing the Paris Agreement, implementing the 2030 Development Agenda and the SDGs. Without addressing the oceans and our natural services and EBA, we will not be able to implement the SDGs as a whole. That's all I have to say for tonight. Here endeth the lesson.
Thank you, Ambassador, for putting the case so strongly for EBA. We look forward to working with you on all these suggestions. We have with us Honorable Minister of Environment and Water Development Sanitation from Zambia. So Mr. Lloyd Kazier, so I'll request Mr.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for staying behind to listen to our presentations. Like he has rightly put it, I'm responsible for water development, sanitation, and environmental protection. So it's quite a mouthful of activities under my ministry. Now, I want to present a Zambian case. I'll highlight the challenges, and I'm going to look at what government is trying to do to make sure that we promote ecosystem-based adaptation. And then we'll also look at areas of support that we'll need. Now, Zambia is located in the southern part of Africa, and is landlocked. Therefore, we have a few challenges that has actually rocked our country in terms of managing the ecosystem-based adaptation. Our source of energy in Zambia is 90% hydro, and 10% is shared amongst other sources of energy. Now, this climatic change has affected us so much that the rivers, the waters are dwindling. We do not have sufficient waters to support these hydropower systems. Therefore, we are faced with the challenge of load shedding. Power is rationed. Therefore, what fills the gap is deforestation. Zambians are now falling on other sources of energies by cutting trees and making them into other fuels like charcoal. Charcoal in our country is a huge source of energy, and this is leading to deforestation. People now are cutting trees anyhow in the riverbanks and anywhere where they feel they can actually cut these trees. So they are actually destroying the ecosystem. The other major part is destroying the watersheds. People are settling in where watersheds are, and water ponds, swamps, thereby denying the rivers the much more needed resources. Because if we don't manage this water resource, it will lead to water disappearing and sinking. Where there are swamps, when you settle people, you find that that water resource disappears. And this is a major concern. And there's no control in the drilling of water, more especially in areas where people have settled. They do not have water supply, proper piped water. This has led to individuals resorting to drilling underground water. And this underground water supplies our rivers, our streams through natural springs. Now, if people settle on these natural ponds, they are now affecting the flow of natural water, thereby making distortions in the ecosystem. What are the interventions that government is trying to put in place? We are trying now to put up a policy direction to make sure that we reduce on forest deforestation. We are also trying to promote biodiversification. There's also a use of fertilizer, conventional fertilizer in our farming system. This is destroying our soils. Now, what are we trying to do as government to encourage people to promote biodiversification? We are trying to encourage organic farming. This will bring back the natural nutrients in our soils. So we are also trying to control the fishing methods, because villagers will use poison to catch their fish. Now, this is also destroying a lot of species of, a lot of fish species in our rivers and lakes. So we are trying to put up a policy in which to control all these activities in order to promote the EbA. Now, I can go on giving you a list of problems that we are experiencing, and the best is to encourage natural habitation of these resources. So we need to employ a lot of studies, research, in order to protect these natural habitats. We are also trying to see if we can make a study, which is an ongoing, to bridge the gap of destroying the nature and trying to promote the natural habitation for our people. So you find that there are quite numerous problems that we are going through because of climatic change. And some of these problems are self-created, self-destructive. So we need to invite the corporate world to come and invest in this ecosystem-based adaptation, so that at least we provide education and sensitization to our people to go back to the old system of keeping nature. I think my 5 minutes has lapsed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. It's very important point, poverty, adaptation, conservation. This is sort of excess of evil in a way that, how can we look and, say, okay, we will do conservation or adaptation if there is underinvestment? Poor people, with poverty, when we say adaptation, what are we talking about? We will help the communities to sustain on $2 a day? Or it should be, so that's the question. Adaptation must be transformative. It cannot be, like resilience, so-called, the definition give, elasticity, and with a shock, it will come back. Those poorest of the poor, if you look at the pristine ecosystems in the world, wetlands, which are economists at times, shared through economic studies, those are $10 million or $20 million. Poorest of the poor live in those, around those wetlands or areas in developing countries. So we need to think and maybe rethink about our strategies for adaptation. We cannot look at adaptation in vacuum. Whatever happening around us, everything should be integrated. So now I want to come to you all. Your reactions, questions, before we go into another panel discussion. Floor is yours. Too tired or? Yes, please. Yeah, yeah.
Hi, Louis Bloomberg with the Nature Conservancy. Norbert posed an interesting question at the very end of his talk about the need to get politicians and decision makers to give priority to ecosystem-based adaptation. And I wondered if any of the other panelists, or even Norbert, who have been thinking about this issue, have any either experience in doing this or have some thoughts about that.
Okay. Any other question? We will have few, then we will come to panel. Yeah, over there. Yeah.
I'm just gonna sit.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Tanya. I'm from Duke University. I'm doing my master's in public policy and focusing on international development as well as environmental policy. I guess what I was getting out of a lot of your presentations today is that the ecosystems themselves are very different, and it is very context specific what we do with EBA. Has there been any work at the institutional or the global level where you're kind of information sharing? Is that even something that is possible in EBA? If so, is it ecosystems based? Or are we looking at investments and who has more need versus capacity? And then finally, I guess one of my responses to this while I was thinking about this was, should we turn evidence-based practice on its head and be looking at practice-based evidence as informing future projects or engagements that you would have with respect to EBA specifically? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your presentation. I'd like to ask you about EBA approaches for urban areas. Do you know anything about it? Do you have any examples? Thank you.
Okay. Any other? Yeah, back over there and that's here.
Hello, my name is Janto Hess from the University College London. I'm doing a PhD on how to involve the private sector in climate adaptation finance in small island development states. I would have a question for the ambassador from the Seychelles. I found it quite interesting how you talked about the blue carbon and how the ocean is coming up here at the COP frequently. How do you see the chances of blue carbon being implemented in a mechanism comparable to REDD+ in the official negotiations?
Yeah, this one.
Okay, thank you. My name is Salome Gofan. I come from Liberia. I work in the environment, and I work on conservation program around the East Nima Nature Reserve. And the East Nima Nature Reserve is one of the protected areas that we have in Liberia. And I also work with local communities that shared similar shared experience that are impacted by climate change. But from the presenter, I've been monitoring your presentation, and you talk about the ecosystem-based adaptation, which is very important and crucial for biodiversity conservation. But I want us to also understand that there are a lot of circumstances, that face the local community. And one of the crucial issues has to do with livelihood, alternative livelihood for people who live across this area. And adaptation is not an event, it's a process. And in most of the communities, those people have lived traditionally by what they do for a very long time. And getting into new position to adapt to climate change activity is going to take a time. So as you were doing your presentation, I did not clearly understand what are the alternatives for livelihood that will be sustainable, that will help the community people to build resilience as they go through the process of adaptation. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come to now panel. I believe the first question. Norbert, your name was taken. EBA integration policies overall.
Yeah, thank you for the questions and really for the interest of the auditorium at that late hour to be so interested in this concept. But it's an exciting concept. But I think the answer has been given by my neighbor. I just repeat that nature reduces risks, and I would add in a very cost-efficient way. Because I think that's what would in the end convince politicians to demonstrate to them you can do it much cheaper than with the conventional walls and heavy infrastructure. That's how I see it. That would at least work in, let's say, more advanced countries. I'm not quite sure about the poorer countries. The story will be different there, but the answers have been given here as well. I would like also to address two other questions. One on what is being done on knowledge sharing and disseminating the messages. It is in particular in our interest as one of those who started the whole practice of EBA to collect knowledge, to share it, to disseminate it, and to do more work on this side, including also for the scientific community. And there's a small group of initiatives and actors called Friends of Ecosystem-based Adaptation, FEBA or FEBA or whatever it should be pronounced in English. And we're also giving some seed funding for that activity that this is going on to further promote the message. I'm really excited to hear what I heard here from the ambassador and all the others, that everybody knows what it is about today. But it's true, 6 years ago or 7 years ago, you hardly could explain what that concept was. And my last quick answer, but I'm quite sure here people who could much better address it is on urban EBA. I would say very simple, just if you put more trees and parks into cities, that would help a lot, at least to compensate that on heat waves, etc. But I'm quite sure there's more solutions about it. That's what my personal experience tells me in different cities. The city I'm living, a big city, Berlin, is quite green. If I compare it with more denser cities with more concrete, I can see the difference.
Thank you, Norbert. Anyone else? Yeah, Kathy? Yeah.
I'm very glad that my 3 words stuck. That is fantastic. So in terms of the knowledge sharing, absolutely yes. And FEBA, and there's another program called PEDR, the Program on Environmental Disaster, Ecosystem-based Disaster Risk Reduction. Also, at the Nature Conservancy with NOAA and partners all over the world, we have the Reef Resilience Network. 80% of the world's reefs managers are in that network. And so we host and share information about blue carbon, about ecosystem-based adaptation, reef management. So there is a system there and others. In terms of the urban work, the Nature Conservancy just released a report this week about the power of trees in cities. And so just to Norbert's point, some quantification of the role of trees and lives saved with more trees, heat island effect reduction with those trees. So some very strong evidence there. And I will hand this over to the ambassador.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the oceans community are a bit slow off the block. And I think one of the reasons is that traditionally the forest nations have tended to be much better organized even outside of the climate process. You know, in conservation, you have alliances and they've had pop stars singing about them all the time. And I think, and it's easier to concentrate attention on the forest because on the land areas, the ocean covers the earth. There aren't 3 oceans, there's 1 ocean. And there are those of us who are sea locked, that's the islands, and then they are coastal and with different interests. I think that has been one of the things that has made it difficult to make progress within the formal process. But as I've shown you what Seychelles and other SIDS are doing through partnerships in GLISPA, TNC and others, is that we're not waiting for the process to deliver. We've seen what happens when you wait for the process to deliver. And we can't, if there's one thing SIDS don't have, it's the luxury of time. We can't wait for processes to deliver. The Green Climate Fund has said it will fund ecosystem-based adaptation. We know it's slow in getting off the ground. This is why Seychelles went into innovative financing. We did the debt swap. By the way, we're now working with the World Bank to issue some $11 million in blue bonds to finance sustainable fishing. So these are innovative ways that we are looking while we wait for processes to deliver. But as I talk about that, there was the lady, she left from Liberia. Is it Liberia or Nigeria? Ecosystem-based adaptation is not about conservation, not only about conservation. It's conserving nature so that you can get back from it later on. It's to get better benefits from nature in terms of jobs, in terms of welfare, in terms of food security, in terms of living a healthy life. But unfortunately, the way conservation was done in the past, there came this conflict. I used to be a minister of environment in my country, and I used to tell the rangers, we have very strict environment laws in Seychelles, and I used to tell the officials in the environment ministry that the work we do is not about protecting sharks and turtles and flowers and trees. It's not about that. It's about people. It's not about nature. There's a problem. The problem comes from people, and the solution will come from people. So this is the way we have to change the whole way we looked at it. Let me give an example of oceans. One of the reasons you protect parts of the ocean is either because it's been damaged by overfishing, land development, hotel development, damaged coral reefs. But one of the benefits of protecting areas, one of the reasons you protect areas is to allow stocks to regenerate. And sometimes you have permanent protected areas, and you have protected areas that can shift. Depending, and with climate change, who knows what's going to happen under the ocean? Species are shifting. All sorts of things are happening we're finding out. So it's going to make the conservation part of it even more difficult. So this is the way we find, for example, in parts of Africa where you've had nature reserves to protect wildlife, once you involve the local community, in fact, you get a better protection of the wildlife and you get a better return on the investment you're making in that wildlife. So this is the way we are looking at it. And what's happening here is that countries like Seychelles are refusing to be limited by the boundaries of what are sometimes really, really frustrating, dysfunctional negotiations, where the smaller and the weaker and the poorer are bossed around. So we in Seychelles, our former president used to say, we said, let's think outside the box. And he said, why should there be a box? We think, we fall over, we dust ourselves up, we get up, we say, it didn't work, let's go somewhere else. And what we found in Seychelles is when you take these innovative measures that we're taking, like the debt swap and the blue bonds, and the MSP for the entire EEZ, we may be the first island state in the country, in the world, which have an EEZ for entire. You get friends coming along. You get organizations who are saying there is something new happening, and they want to be part of the story. That's why TNC partnered us in the debt swap. TNC came along, Wait Foundation came along, Oceans 5 came along, even Leonardo DiCaprio gave us $1 million. They wanted to be part of this new narrative. What Ali has been talking about is don't be weighed down by definitions of the past, or you are doomed to remain in the past. Redefine what doesn't work. Take new approaches, because this is a story. EBA is not a story about nature. It is a story about human survival in nature, with nature, for nature. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, maybe, wow. So I'm already convinced, and I'm still moved. I think we should get the ambassador to be the ambassador for EBA. So just to quickly answer like some of the comments there. First, the beauty of being part of a non-state actor is really we can be as creative as we want. not saying that the governments are not creative, but it's really about making a case for the sector so we both influence the policymakers and the politicians. So through this national study that we're doing, basically a national return on investment, making a case for small-scale fisheries and for coastal resource management, we're hoping to influence the Philippine Development Plan, which is basically the whole Bible of the new administration. The next thing is influencing politicians. And how do we do that? If we get 20% of our coastal municipalities, that's about 140 municipalities, saying that we want EBA and this is the way to go for climate change adaptation, that's building momentum. And politicians cannot ignore number of votes, number of people who are clamoring for it. The next thing that I want to address is really about promoting these through national campaigns. So we're developing a social marketing campaign across the country to be able to promote EBAs.
Thank you. Krista?
Thank you. I will only refer to the first question, and I will speak as politician and policymaker and decision maker. I think that for us, to Honduras, this is a big opportunity because it's the president himself that he is looking at this as his master plan for development for our country. We have one plan, the economic development plan called Honduras 2020, and it refers only and specific to all the issues that we have to attend to our economic growth. And now we have this master plan of soil, forest, and water that we need as resources, not only for our people, but also for employment to develop all this economic growth that we want to see in our country. So I think that as a politician and as a president, he is looking at this as we should see it, and I am very proud to be part of this team, and I am really expecting that we're investing $25 million of our national funds in something related to nature, but for development, for our development. So I think this is a big step to us. We are a developing country, and it hasn't been done before. So we're taking big steps on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista.
I think there was a question regarding the experience of urbanization. I think I wanted to take it up from there. Urbanization has come along with a lot of difficulties, more especially the industrial discharge. How are we managing this? And in a lot of urban areas, we don't have trees. Like my colleagues have pointed out, we need to plant more trees, and we need to manage our environment and protect it from pollutions and other vices that are going to destroy our ecosystem. So government need to demonstrate the willpower to support these programs. Most of the times, research is done, given to government, and they put it in the shelves. It's up to us politicians to make sure that we implement these programs effectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You want to say something? Yes.
I want to share a thought about combining all of the questions into one answer, and that is that part of the job of all of us here is to scale this as a solution for communities, for people, and for nature. And so when you think about livelihoods, and our colleague from Liberia who made the comment about livelihoods being that key strategy for communities, for the longevity of community health and resilience, and then Norbert, your comment about getting elected officials and policy to support it. One of the things, in addition to government funding, is we will need private funding, like the innovation that Ambassador Jumeau has shown in the Seychelles. And so looking at ecosystem-based adaptation and nature-based adaptation as a new vocation, as a new industry, training young people to collect the data that will be necessary for investors to invest in these solutions. And we'll have to understand the way natural assets perform, similarly to the way we understand that traditional infrastructure assets perform. And so understanding that data performance, how do we collect it? What are we collecting? And when you think about an investor making an investment into a toll road or a port, you're looking at data. Show me 20 years of data for this infrastructure. And that data record needs to be built, and it needs to be actionable information that investors can rely on and assess their risk in that investment. And so that's part of our strategy to begin to recommend methodologies for that data collection for leveraging private investment. But in addition, someone's going to have to collect that data, and that is an economic development opportunity across the board and in all economies.
Thank you. It's critical and crucial that we do not take EBA as conservation. It is definition. That's why in the beginning I said it was a paradigm shift. Maybe conservationists were not too aware what they are getting into, but it is human-centered. Co-benefits are biodiversity conservation and biodiversity conservation and overall ecosystem services. But we have to invest into nature to take back and to sustain human well-being. So that's critical in all this, because we have been doing it for so long. We are really good at doing conservation, 40, 50 years. So perhaps, as Ambassador said, we are hosted by our successes. We don't want to get out of that, because that's what we know best. But we have to change, because ecosystem, by definition, ecosystem-based adaptation is personification of sustainable development in the context of climate change. It must be inclusive, it must be human-centered, it must have respect for local ecosystems, it must have economic value, return on investment should be there. If it's not EBA. We might be doing business as usual and touching upon here and there and then having glossy reports and all this, but that's what we are abusing EBA, and then we are compromising the long-term benefits of both human and ecosystems. So that's critical, that we need to be ruthlessly honest while doing it. But the question mark is there a yardstick? Are there standards? What is successful adaptation, if I ask you? Is there a criteria? No. We have been discussing for 20 years climate negotiations and adaptation. Unfortunately, there is no criteria. What is successful adaptation? So now, as Norbert also mentioned and others, Friends of EbA, we all trying together to come up with some sort of criteria, not making it a straitjacket, but working together, have some sort of criteria, yardstick. When we say it's successful adaptation, is it just successful implementation of project activities or long-term impact with all these prerequisites for adaptation and ecosystem-based adaptation? Now we have last few minutes. So I would request our panelists, 1 minute each, last few words. Kathy, you have already said take-home message, but still, last word, all the panelists. So I'll start with Ambassador.
Okay, thank you. For me to sum it up, when we look at what we in Seychelles are doing with EBA, we already had before climate change became the issue it has become. We already had a very good reputation internationally in conservation. For me, climate change, EBA is helping nature to become a tool that we can use to address climate challenges, food security challenges, development challenges. Do away with this old thinking that preserving nature, protecting nature is a brake on development. That's not what it is. It is part of the development process. It's part of what puts sustainability into sustainable development. So use what you have for the betterment of the communities, for the betterment of the country, not just of the species that are there. You're protecting a species because if it disappears, this is what it's going to do to the human beings living in that community, that country, that region. This is what you lose by not protecting it. And we are finding out, for example, as a middle to high income country, we could not, we had a big debt. Instead of getting more loans and going more into debt, we use the debt to invest in nature, to address something that we didn't have funding for. And one of the attractions to the people who helped us with the debt swap was they got to invest the same money twice. They gave us a loan, which we didn't repay, and then we invested the same money back into nature. So it was a win-win situation. So EBA is a tool, a means to achieving an end that we're all facing in addressing all these huge challenges, global challenges that face us. Thank you.
I'm going to add 2 words to the first 3. So everyone say it with me. First word, nature.
Nature
reduces
risk
quantifiably and cost effectively. That's my
cost effectively. We're not too tired to stumble over that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Albert?
Yes, thank you. I think most of the messages have been said. I would like to share one view which just came in my mind listening to all of you. I have the feeling that the North can learn a lot from the South in this regard. Listening to the ambassador, listening to the minister, to you, that's exciting. And the concept of EBA is not a concept for developing countries. You said that for the East Coast in the US, and that's true in many circles. It's a global concept, could be applied everywhere, so we can learn from that. The message needs to be disseminated. I think that's a key point from my perspective.
Thank you.
Well, I've been looking for this hour and a half, the bag you have there, and I truly believe that change needs behavior change. And as we in Honduras, I mean, politicians are talking about this, we really need to involve people. And the only way that we are going to see this change is involving the people and showing them, teaching them how is that all the nature that surround us, it helps us to our lives. So I truly believe that, and I hope that in a few years, not much, probably 10, we can see our country and your countries too in a different manner, not in these 20 years negotiations, but looking forward in things and in territories as a really good change. Thank you.
So just 2 quick points. The first one is, as what my colleague has mentioned, EBA needs behavior change. And at the core of the work are really the communities that we work in. Let's put them there. The next one is because the work is so urgent. And if I can borrow the words of Bono, who is a rock star, because we are the generation that can, we are the generation that must. Thank you.
And as a lawmaker, we need to ensure that all these plans are put in a policy format so that we manage the people in observing and conserving nature and ensuring that our people observe these and follow the rules that we make for ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will also say a word on last adaptation. The reason we are doing maladaptation, that we are taking adaptation as a goal. Adaptation is not a goal. it's a means towards sustainable development. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you all the panelists. Let's give a big hand to all of us. Yeah.
Very quickly, another EBA opportunity tomorrow night. TNC Columbia, Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Columbia, and the Institute of Hydrology, Meteorology. Food and drink, this is what's most important. They are offering dinner and drinks, and it will be held at the Palm Plaza Hotel. My colleagues are in the back, and they will tell you all about it. But it is all about advancing lessons learned on climate change adaptation, and it's a fantastic program. So I hope you'll go and have dinner and have a great time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. I'll be coming. Surely. Thank you. Thank you.